No, y'all are so wonderful to help and to sing and to praise and all. That's such a wonderful thing to be able to share the good news of the resurrection, the very transformation of our world, the things that the world tried to put to death to end Jesus' love and grace and peace, and they put him to death on a cross and sealed him in a tomb. And it would not stop God's plan to share God's love with all the world and with me and with you. Today is Easter Sunday. It's a day that keeps moving around all the time. I look, next year it's early. It's like March this next year. After that, it's in April. It's like the 20th of April. Man, it'll be hot that Easter. Or it'll be cold and snowing. We don't know. It'll be something else. But still, the message each and every day goes on and on and on in the good news of the world. Jesus is alive forever. Part of the thing I love when we gather on Easter Sunday is that we do take this old chicken wire cross that must be about 40 years old, probably older than I am, which used to be younger. Chicken wire on a cross. And then we take it and drag it into the sanctuary. Can you believe that? Who would bring chicken wire to church? I know, Sam built the cross. And Gus. Years and years ago, they built the cross. And they brought it into church, and we put flowers on it. And ever since then, I've been trying to make contact with the congregation when I preach for Easter Sunday, and I have not yet been able to figure out where to do that today, except here. So, Fred, you're on the front row. Oh, thanks. Aren't you kind? The most wonderful news that's ever been found in the whole world, that's ever been heard, is Christ is alive. What he said in the world about caring for one another, about loving one another, about having faith in God, about trusting in God, about sharing God's love with others, healing those who hurt, comforting those who mourn, healing those who are sick. It's fulfilled in the resurrection. I always love the story of the resurrection. The very fact that God, Christ, is alive forevermore helps fulfill all that God has promised in the Old and the New Testament. Yep. In the Old and the New Testament, all together is fulfilled with the promise of the resurrection. The ability of God to work in the world despite suffering, despite pain, despite death, despite evil. God is at work in the world again through Christ, alive forevermore. I can't imagine how it would have been that Easter morning, early on Easter morning. This morning, I set my alarm for 6, and those of you who know me well know and realize that I am not a morning person. I don't know why the world can't start at least at 10:30. You know? I mean, I'm good to stay up for about till 12:30, usually 1 o'clock. I'm good at night. You know, I'm a night owl. I do my best thinking sometimes late at night, but sometimes it comes in the morning. Well, this morning I set my alarm clock for 6. Thought I was doing good. Moravian sunrise service started 6:15. I thought I'll be ahead of it. I looked. Weather app said what time the sun came up this morning? 6:45. Now, there was a little bit of a hitch there. But so I woke up 15 minutes early. Can you believe that? Me, woke up 15 minutes early. So I got clothes on. Penny, my 13-year-old golden retriever, who really only does what Penny wants to do when Penny wants to do it as fast as Penny wants to do it. I said, "You want to go for a ride?" She's like, "Really?" She goes piling into the car, and we come down and change out the cross out here. It was still dark. We changed it out, and lights beginning to come up just a little bit, a little bit, a little bit. As I've done every year since I've been here, I guess I could go back through my 4,000 million pictures in my phone and find it. But I go up to the tower. It's kind of cool. We have the stairway to heaven up there. You know, you got to wake up the squirrels this morning. So I went up, climbed up on the roof latch. It was cold. But I was so glad it wasn't freezing, because it was still damp from all the rain. So I stood up there, and I got up there about, 6:15 or so. And I realized that what I was expecting when I got there and what was there was two different things. It was still about dark. All the way downtown, it was still dark. And I thought, Jason, you thought you was coming up here for a beautiful sunrise, and lo and behold, all you found was dark. Mary's went to the tomb, according to this story from Matthew, early in the morning before the dawn, and they thought they knew what they were going to get when they got there. Stone rolled in the way. And what they got when they got to the tomb was something totally different. Can you imagine that? All of a sudden, the angel of the Lord comes down, and in front of their very eyes, now these are two brave soldiers there. Well, it says soldiers, doesn't it? We don't know how many it is technically. But anyway, they're brave, and they shake like dead men and fall out like dead men. Pass out, scared to death. And I got to agree with them. Angel shows up at the tomb. I'm going to probably pass out too. And the angel comes, and according to this story, Matthew, that it rolls the stone away. And Jesus is not there. Sits on the stone. You go to the disciples and tell them that he is not here. He has risen from the dead, and he goes ahead of you to Galilee. All right. Mary's, now the thing is that now, you know how it is. These soldiers have done passed out, and the two women that were there, they're like, I got the message and we're going. They're doing what they need to do. How often is that in history that women have kept things going when the men stopped? And this day, Mary's go on, and lo and behold, who do they run into? Jesus Christ. The New Revised Standard Version says that he greeted them with the words, greetings. Really? You think? I don't know. I mean, there's a limitation to our language. And maybe perhaps they were so taken aback, they didn't remember exactly what he said. So they're like, well, you know, he had to say something to them. If it would have been in the South, he would have probably said, hey, y'all. Comforting, and they would know that it was him. And they fell and they worshiped him. My. And then he reiterates what the angel said to him. Go and tell my disciples that I go ahead of them to Galilee. You know, there are variations on the gospel story. If you read one, Jesus says, we'll meet you in Jerusalem. We'll meet another one, we'll meet you in Galilee. I like this one today, meet you in Galilee. Why? That's the first place some of the disciples met Jesus, was in Galilee. I thought about that just for a little bit. I wonder if today, if one of the things that we can do, one of the things that we do this Easter, is to think just a second about where we first met Christ. Part of what Easter is a renewal of life, the renewal of the power of God in our life. That's part of what Easter does, is it helps us understand God's presence in the world again. God doesn't need it, but we do. God's always faithful, always with us, always caring for us, always sustaining and upholding and forgiving. But yet Easter is the time when we come together, when we remember, when we give thanks for the very fact that God first loved us and that Christ's promise of life is extended to us by our meeting him, by our claiming him as our own Savior and Lord. Makes a difference. Every time. Every time. I love the fact that in true United Methodist theology, once saved, always saved is not a thing. Do you know? It's a decision for us to be able to choose to follow after Christ in our lives. And it's a decision that we make one time in our life, and it's a decision that we remake each and every day of our lives. We choose a conscious following of Christ in our lives, to hang on to that, to trust that, to hold to that. Yep. The way we handle the world changes because of Christ claiming us and transforming our hearts and helping us to walk a better path, a more solid, more faithful, more holy path. Yep. It's our claiming Christ for our lives. Us claiming and holding on to the news of the resurrection for our lives and for our world. Well, I got to the bell tower early this morning, 6:15, and you know what? It was cold this morning. I wore like 3 shirts and a big old hat and a thick coat. And I put on short socks because I was in a hurry, and that was a foolish thing to do. My ankles were really cold. But I stood up there, and I'd already got up there. Now, it's 4 flights of stairs from here to there. I'm getting old. I didn't want to come back down in the warm, so I just stayed up there just a little bit. I kind of hovered over the roof hatch like a chimney. I said, Lord, if I go to sleep, I'll fall in. They'll never find me. And I look up every once in a while, and I'm like, I see a little bit of light breaking over town. It comes up real beautiful. And it done stretched out. And I'm like, it's cold. I gotta warm up. And I look back up. Just in a matter of time, the light that was gaining on the earth kept moving upward and upward and brighter and brighter and brighter and brighter. I noticed something this morning I don't remember noticing before. Maybe it was just me. I guess I was maybe paying a better attention. Maybe I got there earlier this time than I do sometimes. And I look back up over this way. And you won't believe what was in the sky. Well, maybe you would when I tell you what it is. The moon. And that blooming moon was about as bright as the sun on the other side. And I thought about that. The moon doesn't produce its own light. It's a reflection of the sun. You know that. It's a reflection of the sun that shines in the darkness. And I got to thinking about that just a little bit. Because the moon, it was way on up here, and the sun was way on down there, yet it just come over the top of the trees. And the moon's still there in the sky. All of a sudden, the moon just disappeared. Well, where did it go? The light over here in front of me got so bright that it stopped showing up over there in the moon. And I thought about that just a little bit, like you remember God's presence in the world, the light of Christ shining in the world, and somehow in the darkness is overcome. It doesn't mean that evil and pain and suffering go away, but it does mean that it doesn't have the same power in our lives and in our world because of the sun. Not because of the fireball, but for the Jesus Christ, the Son of God, coming in the world. It's a new and different light because of the news of the resurrection. I don't know about you, but I need to hear that over and over again. You flip on the news, you talk to the doctor, you listen to whatever radio's news source you have, you know, it doesn't take long. Oh, you know, it's this time of the year. You get the tax bill and you think the world has come to an end. And yet at the same time, Christ's presence is there to sustain us and to uphold us and to lift us up. And we claim it. And because of his action on the cross, our life looks different. The pain and suffering of the cross brings forth the beauty of the earth, all the beauty of the earth, even you, in a new and different way that's powerful and sustaining. You know, there are times in life when it looks like that the darkness is going to just overtake us. And yet it's because of the work of Jesus and the news that the women shared with the disciples that there is a transformation that occurs for our world. And that's what we do. We go forth into the world to share the good news of the risen Christ so that others may hear and others may know, and that we ourselves can be reassured in that. John Wesley, the founder of Methodism, you know, he came to Georgia in the 1700s to preach to the native people. And he oftentimes had an early morning service, and none of the native people showed up, and he felt like such a failure. But John Wesley was so regimented, he would not change at all very much. So he was felt, you know, things didn't really go very well. One of the classic stories about John Wesley is he talks to other people and he said, well, sometimes my faith is not as strong as it should be. I don't know. And the advice that he was given was to preach faith until you have it. And once it begins to take root in our lives, it transforms our lives. And through the Spirit of God's work active in our life, it changes. Don't forget the work of the cross. Don't forget the power of the resurrection. And don't forget the presence of God in the world today. When we gather around this table, we talked about when we were going to do communion, and we said, why don't we just do it at Easter? When we gather around this table, we join with the disciples long ago, recognizing Christ's presence in our world. It was first they recognized Christ's presence through the breaking of the bread, through the sharing of the cup. They knew that he was alive forevermore, and through our remembrance, we know that he is alive with us and present with us. All glory, honor, and power be to the one who was, who is, and who is to come.